I call the April 13, 2026 Assembly Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 6:07. Ms. Adkisson, would you read the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We would like to acknowledge that the city and borough of Juneau is on Tlingit land and wish to honor the indigenous peoples of this land. For over 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of our community. We are grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people. Guneshish. Guneshish.
Thank you, Ms. Adkisson. Ms. Hendricks, would you please note the roll?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. You have a quorum and we have Mr. Kelly online.
Very good, thank you. May I get a motion to approve the agenda? We'll note the agenda as approved. Thank you.
Sorry to give you a motion.
May I get, I have been told I should get a motion to approve the minutes. May I get a motion to approve these minutes? Ms. Hall.
I move we approve the minutes from 3/16/2026 Assembly Committee of the Whole and 5/24/25 Assembly Committee of the Whole minutes and ask for unanimous consent.
Seeing no objection, that motion, excuse me.
Objection for the purpose of a clarification. I thought I heard a 5 in there for the second set of minutes. Did you mean the April 24th, 2025 minutes?
That's what I said. Pretty
Okay,
sure that's
sorry.
what I said, Mr. Kelly. Do you have a cold?
I do. That's why I'm here. Sorry, I misheard. I'll withdraw my objection.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. And with no objection, those minutes are adopted. That brings us to our first agenda topic, ordinance 2025-01BA, an ordinance appropriating up to $270,000 to the manager for a grant to the Southeast Childhood Collective for Juneau Summer Child Care Programs. Since this was sponsored by me, I will start us off just with a little background on my intent here. First of all, you've seen that the proposal and ordinance are in the packet and read them. As we all know, childcare is an identified need in our community. For all the benefits it has, both for children as well as for economic development and activity, allowing parents to get jobs, start a business, increase revenue and income. Just a little bit of a backstory. As we know, Raleigh was wound down quite quickly at the end of last summer. We did have a provider step up to provide the care at a few sites, not as many as before, but a few sites. It happened quickly, and I think we should be grateful for that. It was, however, a reduction in enrollment and capacity from 180 and 5 or 6 years ago to the current number of 60. With that issue and with the known need, there were community members and groups that identified this as a significant issue, sought out ideas how to fix it, and as we know, of course, a major organization that is critical for supporting our child care providers and coming up with fixes to improve our child care services is the Southeast Childhood Collective. They were contacted by these groups when asked to come up with an idea on how to fix it. They made a proposal and proposed a solution. But this was, in response to a request from the community and community groups. Our current issue is that, and this applies to, I think, a number of childcare providers, but this one in particular, they're currently unable to increase revenue to create enough additional capacity to be able to expand. They provide care at 3 sites. And we know all providers need startup support. The current operator of this 3 sites did not ever receive any. The startup grant that we have through the city is only for ages 0 through 5. And the JDC loan program does require, paying it back and making payments. So this proposal offers, again, it's an appropriating ordinance to help develop and support existing childcare sites as well as possibly create new ones. For the new sites, the funds are available for any businesses seeking to provide the care. These funds in the ordinance, are focused for summer capacity, but it is likely that any capacity created in the summer would carry over into the school year as well. And as you can see in the proposal and the ordinance, the funding would provide scholarships to lower income families until the centers are eligible for for the children that are going there to receive childcare assistance to help with lower income families. That's my intro. We have Miss Scheibler in the audience and can bring her up for questions. If people have questions of me or discussion, we can do that. And then, maybe we can bring up Ms. Scheibler once those are ready. Any questions for the assembly for me or are we? Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Were you saying, so the way it's set up is that this type of funding will be focused at children ages 0 to 5?
No, this will be for school age.
School age.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was bringing up the 0 to 5 and that the providers of school age care can't get the startup grants the city offers. So in case of wondering why we're doing it this way as opposed to another. I guess another thing I would add, we do have the community grants program. I had discussed with the group and that the timing is not such that would, that money won't flow into until FY 27. That's in July. We're going to be, well into summer. And so trying for expediency of doing this way. But if people were wondering why it didn't run through a community grant program, that's the reason.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. I see Mr. Kelly. I'd miss you Scandies first.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I know the chamber was involved in this, or certainly I've heard about this at chamber and their work on it. My question is, I understand the timing piece with why not community grants. The $1 million that was returned from the school district and that they weren't able to use, that got a fair bit of attention and fair bit of discussion at the board, whether to give that back. I have no doubt that going from a number of 180 to 60 starts everybody working on how do we come up with a better solution than this. And so I'm sure there's other work on it, but how does that particular identified funding source, as far as like that coming on to everybody's attention, because the solution identified is money from that. So is it you have $1 million and actually our solution is spend that $1 million?
Yeah, Miss Scandies, the money, the money returned from the school district was going to return to the general fund and these funds would be spent from. You could make a connection. It is also, of course, money in, money out. We know the budget situation, so we know we have many priorities, but it maybe helps, but as we saw on Saturday, we still are. Right, yeah.
I guess, no, that's helpful. I just wasn't a solution identified, or would we have received something during the community grants process had that not received as much attention that this money was allocated for childcare? Is it just, do you understand what I'm asking? It seems like a convergence of timing, and I'm wondering if it doesn't matter. I'll focus more on the
Okay.
whether it's a good idea.
Sorry, I don't know if it helps. Again, the timing was just trying to move it with expediency and honestly as fast as I could process this and get something up. It may have been linked, but I mean, it's been an identified issue, and so. Mr. Brooks. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. It's my understanding that the sites are currently not licensed, which means they are not required to do background checks, and and they are not eligible for subsidies for low-income families until they get that licensing. I see the licensing is also mentioned here in the proposal, and that there are two different funding options. I just want to make sure that if we pass this out tonight, whether we go with option one or option two, that licensing will be a part of that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kelly. I'll probably let Ms. Scheibler, tune in or respond with maybe a little more detail, but my understanding is that working to get these 3 sites, and they all have to be licensed separately, of course, because they're 3 different sites, is a goal of these funds. And the scholarships are a kind of an intermediate solution until licensing becomes, they are licensed and then eligible for the child care assistance.
Thank you.
But we'll make sure Ms. Scheibler can get on that. Ms. Wall.
Mr. Brooks may have been before me.
My question was asked and
Okay.
answered.
I actually have a question for staff. We'll have questions for Ms. Scheibler too, but if now's a good question,
Yeah.
time to ask.
Yeah.
This is actually maybe for Ms. Wright. There's lots to discuss here, but one of the things that I was curious about was about procurement and why we would be able to pass on to a nonprofit to fund directly a private business. I feel like in the past, we've had issues when there have been private businesses, maybe they're the only ones that provide a service, but providing without competition. Whereas I know our childcare funds do go to private operators through AUIC, but there's a competitive part of that.
Thank you for that question. So because we would be, our contractual relationship would be with a nonprofit, and then they would be distributing those funds. So the contractual obligation for the procurement code, we would be fulfilling under our procurement through the nonprofit. Does that make sense? Like we don't care as much what happens after we have our legal relationship with an entity that is eligible under our procurement code.
Very good. Maybe are folks ready to bring up Ms. Scheibler and ask any additional questions of her? If you would. Ms. Scheibler, welcome. Thank you for all you do for childcare in our community, but yeah, if you say your name and organization, and then we can see who may have questions for you.
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me. Blue Scheibler, Executive Director of the Southeast Childhood Collective.
Very good.
And I would like to address Mr. Kelly's questions about licensing if
Yeah.
I can. The current provider is licensed, and so all of their employees work under their current childcare license and are background checked. And it is their intention to get licensed at the other sites too. And just like the funding that we currently give out to providers as startup grants for programs that are serving children ages 0 to 5, we require them to get licensed within a certain amount of time. It's part of the agreement that they sign when they receive funds. And so I would imagine that these funds would be structured in a similar way.
Ms. Wall and then Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Ms. Scheibler, for being here and for working on this very challenging issue. I'm curious about the startup nature of these funds. I definitely appreciate, I've written a lot of grant proposals. Sometimes it does make sense to invest a lot at the beginning because you have a theory about how we're going to get to sustainability. But because of our budget situation, I think I need to understand your confidence that this is, do you know or do you hope that this funding would enable future programs to work without more funding from the city?
I am confident with support that the current programs and any new ones would be successful. Unlike childcare for ages birth to 5, school age childcare is a little bit more of a feasible business model because you can have higher ratios and it's a shorter term of, or time that you're spending operating the business. And so, and I also think it's our best shot at it. If we don't do something now and we go into the summer season with only 60 spaces, it's going to be a huge hardship on families. And it's not just the concerns about families not being able to work. My deeper concern is how many kids are going to be left home alone at too young of an age because their parents have no choice but to go to work. So we have to try something. Startup grants have been very successful for the birth to 5 age. We've opened a couple of small childcare businesses every year that these funds have been available. So I'm pretty confident. I mean, these really address like there's this big catch-22 where Oak Lake needs to hire people to finish the licensing application, get the program set up, so that they can feel confident in really opening registration and getting enrollment that brings in revenue that helps pay the staff that they're hiring. They just can't hire like those program manager positions until they have tuition revenue. They can't get tuition revenue until they have the positions filled. So they're just in a catch-22 that they can't really get out of without support.
I had Mayor Weldon and then Ms. Huskiandes, and then Ms. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Scheibler, for everything you do for childcare. I mean, usually in agreement with you, but this time I'm not. So my question is, this age group is one of the more profitable childcares, but yet you say it's so vitally important. So why aren't you willing to offer the $1.8 million we already give to childcare to fund this? Just having done a little homework assignment, we have, 270,000 is roughly 2.5 positions, 3 positions that we'd have to lay off to get up with this money.
I don't think that's my decision, whether or not to offer that to school age. That's just part of the MOA design. When we, developed the MOA for those funds, when they first started, school age care was being covered by the school district. And so it just wasn't part of our design. Maybe it should be in the future, and that could be conversations that we have with the manager's office.
Thank you. Ms. Huskiandes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks for being here and for all your work, as everyone else has said. I just want to make sure that I'm thinking about this summer and how it compares to last summer, because it was a quick wind down and quick step in. So last summer we had 60 seats, is that accurate? Is that all we were able to spin up, or the provider was able to?
Last summer, the school district was still providing school age
Okay.
care, and they provided spaces for 142 children, and they had wait lists. That was the most they could provide. They had a lot more families requesting and needing care.
Got it. So the 180 was pre them having to reduce the size?
Rally has been offered at the school districts for years and years and years, and we saw a slow decline in its ability to do that starting in 2019. So numbers have gone down from there. In 2019, the summer enrollment was 180 kids. And that's
Got
the
it.
goal that the current provider has, is to have
Got it.
60 spaces at each site to at least get back up to 180, which is 40 more spaces than what was offered last year.
Understood. Okay, so last year there were more than the 60.
Yeah.
And then
And then-
without any intervention, the expectation is this summer we'll have.
I don't know. If they don't have support to like ramp up and do everything they need to do to build their enrollment, increase revenue, to a level where they can feel comfortable hiring more staff and ramping up, it might stay what it is now, which is 60.
Which is 60.
Yeah,
Okay. So the status quo would be 60
yes.
if without city intervention, they don't do more. Right. Okay. Thank you.
They might get higher than that without intervention. I'm not saying that the only way it's going to grow is with funding. It's certainly their intention to continue to ramp up with or without support. I'm saying, in my opinion, most childcare businesses need help with startup. And that's something that they should have received last year when they were suddenly, thrown into this, and they didn't. And so when I was asked to come up with the solution, that's the first thing I think of, because that's what all the other childcare businesses have needed in order to be successful, is just that little startup help.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Hall?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith, and also Ms. Scheibler for being here. So currently, the operator is licensed for the one site in where he is operating. And but the requirement from the state is a separate license for each site that they operate. So he needs 3 additional licenses. And if I'm understanding this right, in order to receive the state's child care assistance program per student, for families to apply for low-income families, he would need to be licensed at these sites, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and in the meantime, it sounds like he's accommodating kids that were already in the program, but, that's obviously not sustainable. Can I do 2 questions or?
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, so
ahead.
I
Ms.
appreciate,
Hall.
yeah, I appreciate that they're looking out for those kids that or the families that would be struggling otherwise, that were already enrolled in the Rally program. I guess I'm kind of wondering if the school district with benefited positions and wasn't able to fill slots for Rally, how this current operator is proposing to be successful where, maybe a better funded program, which maybe Rally was, I don't know. Yeah, I'm having a little trouble seeing how, the school district wasn't successful, but, and I certainly hope he is able to be successful, but can you speak to that a bit, please?
I don't know a lot about the school districts, the way that they ran the financial side of the Rally program, but I know that their biggest struggle was in maintaining staffing, which is an issue for all childcare programs. I think one thing that the current provider has going for them is that they run a full-time year-round business already. And so they're having staff do shift work. So you're sending people over to an elementary school for 4 hours, and they've maybe worked 4 hours at this other site as well. I think that was a struggle for the Rally program in the school district, is there were part-time positions. And so they had a hard time keeping staff. Yeah.
And I did have Ms. Wall. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I realize you might not know the answer to this, but in case you do, when the school district decided to not put on Rally, was there consideration about the impacts in the summer, and is that when this arose, or was it not kind of realized that the impact until later?
To me, on this side, it doesn't feel like the impacts were considered very much, that it was a very quick decision made, probably under duress over budget constraints. Rally historically lost money at the school district level and was often, I think, supplemented by city funds. That's my understanding from the outside perspective.
Right. Further questions, or shall, Ms. Hughes Candies?
Thanks, Mr. Smith. I'm flipping through in case, I was just reviewing the resolution from the school board, and I'm because so much was happening when that private provider stepped in for those sites. Was that was open to multiple providers, is that correct? And that's who was chosen? Or was that the only person who was capable?
They were the only people who responded. We
Okay.
put out sort of like an RFI, mostly to current childcare providers and also to some organizations across the state that had experience providing this age of care. And that was the only one that responded. And then from that point, they dealt with the school district, not me.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? If not, shall we try a motion to see? Mr. Steininger, did you have a motion ready? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sure. I move ordinance 2025-01 BAI to the full assembly and ask for unanimous consent.
Madam Mayor.
Sorry, I have to object on this one. And like I said, I've been a strong supporter of childcare. First of all, I don't like how this was brought before us. The chamber has found fault with us many times of not following a process, shooting from the hip and spending money rapidly. But yet when they want something, as two members of the chamber came because they needed summer childcare for their kids, came and talked to us about this, all of a sudden it's okay. I have a problem with that. And sorry, Madam Manager, I have to call you out a little bit. I do care what happens to the money after it goes through the child care provider, and I think we're providing preferential treatment to a private entity. And you already heard they're having licensing problem, they're having staffing problems. So with that, I think they could have gone through our normal grant process and not just shoot from the hoof. So, and again, these are the most profitable age child group that that we could have childcare for. So this money is taking money from the 0 to 5, in my opinion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Chair Smith. I'll speak in support of moving this forward. I mean, what else are we gonna do? This is a big deal. We do have funds that was intended for this that came back to us. I know our financial position has significantly changed since then. And so what I will say is that my ultimate vote will depend on whether I'm feeling confident that you all are ready to make the cuts that we're going to need to make, because for our larger budget, to me, this is a priority, so I'll support it. But if I start to feel like we're not on a path for sustainability by the time we have to vote for this, then I'll think hard about whether we can afford to do it or not. I will also say that, you know, I hope this one-time funding does the job. And if it doesn't, I would hope that the school district would ask for less funding or outside the cap moving forward, so we can afford to continue to fund this if needed. But I wouldn't do that if they continue to ask for the same amount. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Ms. Hall.
Thank you, Chair Smith. While I do share the mayor's concerns about how this was brought to us, I would like to speak in support of this, as we know it's a need, and also after talking to Ms. Schreiber today, knowing that the current operator is very much caring for the kids that currently aren't eligible for the state childcare assistance because the lack of licensure, and they are still being allowed to attend on a sliding scale. And I think that shows that it's not just for kind of the, you know, the chamber members' personal benefit of their families. You know, I hate to put it that way, but I, you know, after again having this long conversation, I feel pretty confident that they are looking out for the whole community in this, and it really is a need to, you know, we need childcare across the board. And yes, it is more expensive and even, for the younger ones, but no one wants a 7-year-old sitting at home alone with and that does happen, or being in substandard care because the parents are up against the wall and do need to go to work. So I will support this.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Oh, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I feel kind of split on this. I think in the end, I'm not going to stand in the way of it. I think it would have been more efficient to keep this at the school district level. They already had a program, and they already had these funds. But I realize that summer is upon us. We're going to have the need in the community, and I'm pretty sure that even with the support, that need is still not going to be quite satisfied. I won't stand in the way at this point, but I would have preferred that we had maintained the rally program, or that the school district had switched it up to a different program if that was unsustainable. So I'll remove my objection.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Ms. Wall. Mr. Brooks first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will just speak in support. While I do understand the mayor's comments and would side with that if it was different circumstances, but as long as this money is going towards the similar purpose of the program that Rally was providing, to me, it looks like a 80% reduction of what we were initially giving. So it kind of falls in line with the goals of what we're trying to do. And like I said, as long as it's to support that similar program, I think it's a good path forward.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Ms. Wall.
I think Miss Hughes Candy's had her hand before me, so.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mrs. Candies.
It's like not her. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will just say I am fine with moving this forward at this point. I'll be doing a little bit more digging around in the background, but ultimately at the end of the day with these things, I feel like it or not, certainly after Saturday, everything feels like it's running through a different filter and different decision-making process for me personally. But the two things that I will always see if I can get to a yes, and I will always try to get to a yes on, is going to be childcare and housing, because those are the two things we need as a community the most. And it's just, others have said more eloquently, if someone's got to go to work, they got to go to work. So I don't really see we have much of a choice. I was interested in knowing if anyone else responded. They didn't. I certainly want to be cognizant of that in general when we're moving public funds into private hands. And yet this is a failed market like the other failed markets we deal with as a city. And those are the situations where I think it's more appropriate that the city gets involved, and you do end up just being grateful for the providers who will do that work that no one else is doing. Similar to our social services, it's one of those sort of intractable problems that I hope do not always stay that way. I will say in wrapping this up that I would be supportive of in also looking at for things like the MOA, if there are situations where we need to build in more flexibility, especially going forward, where we're looking at something that, let's say there is that intractable problem does require some ongoing municipal subsidy, maybe as we're not able to provide the same levels, or can't provide any more, that we're providing maximum flexibility so we can meet situations like this. So for now, I'm good moving this forward for now because I don't think we have a choice. But and I will also echo, I think in this case we had to, because people were trying to get it going before the summer, but completely agree on the hypocrisy. So your comments are well taken, Mayor Weldon.
Thank you, Mrs. Candies. I'll chime in here. I admit and acknowledge and that this, some of the mechanisms and the timing and the process are imperfect, and I appreciate the mayor, noting those. Again, it's just, it's a critical need. But I will say, I mean, with the position of the city budget, potentially looking at the end of fiscal year 27, 15 months out, I will admit, and things can change in between them but with projections and possible liabilities that we have, having our unrestricted general fund being at $0 that would fund things like this or respond to emergencies. I mean, it made me question, I mean, even the need and the important service this provides. I mean, $270,000 going out is, it's still a tough decision, because could be in a very, 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 very tough budget place. So I understand those concerns, and, but for now I will support it. So yes, I know. Ms. Wall, last one.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I feel like not to harp too much on the process, I do want to say to the body that I did not like that a sole assembly member was able to put something for introduction on the agenda. I guess that's legal. I had never seen it done before. And so I feel like I think that's a dangerous precedent. I'm not going to punish this because of this, or Mr. Smith, because I know why he did what he did. But that's something I'd like to look at as a body, because I think that is could create some problems if that becomes a norm.
Just on that, just so we can, Ms. Wright, would you explain the process? And then I will say I did have two co-sponsors that I shared. They weren't added as sponsors on the, on the ordinance, but do you mind speaking to that, just so we can have clarity and understanding?
Sure. So you did have the 3 members necessary to place this on the agenda. So that is the background of that. It was not a sole person doing it. You are correct that that's not supposed to be the way to go forward. So.
Madam Manager.
Just I think to your point, though, it is important to note that your rules of procedure state that one member can sponsor an ordinance, and that very much is not practice, but is legal. And so if that's something that you would want to change, you would look at changing that in your rules of procedure.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and an objection. Would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. To forward to the full assembly, ordinance 2025-01, lowercase b, uppercase AI. Mr. Steininger,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Ms. Adkisson,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Wall,
Yes.
Ms. Hughes Scandies,
Yes.
Madam Mayor,
No.
Deputy Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries with 8 yeas and 1 nay.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks. That moves us on to our second agenda topic, Telephone Hill Development and Timeline. We have a short memo. We also have a proposed ordinance by the mayor. I think maybe we could start just a short break. Okay, how about 5 minutes back at 6:50? Thanks. I will bring us back to order. Next item up, Telephone Hill timeline and development. Madam Manager, we have a memo. I guess, anything you want to say to start us off, or should we just go with questions?
It's up to you, Chair. I'm happy to summarize my memo or trust that you can read my brief memo.
Maybe just do a quick
Sure.
highlight.
Just to give us a quick update on where we are in the process for Telephone Hill development, which is to demo the existing structures and move forward with a request for qualifications for developers. We issued the RFP, so request for proposals for demolition on April 6th. Bids are due on the 27th, and we will be awarding that on the May 18th regular assembly meeting. The cost estimate for demolition came in at $2.3 million. Of course, we won't know what bid we're awarding till we get those bids returned, but just to give you an idea of what percentage of the project cost is demolition, recall that the appropriation was also for blasting to level out the hill, make some room for utilities. The second request for proposals that we have that will be issued soon, hopefully this week, is a request for proposals to draft a request for qualifications. I call this the RFP for the RFQ, which gets really confusing really quickly, but we will be contracting with a professional firm to draft an request for qualifications that really takes all of the direction that you have given in the statement of objectives, if you remember talking about that at the February 23rd Committee of the Whole, and put that into an actionable document. This is really important because scoring criteria is going to really matter, right? We're not, the idea behind issuing this RFQ is not that it's prescriptive, like we want exactly this thing, but that we'll prioritize greater density, prioritize less use of city subsidies. Those types of things will be built into this request for qualifications. That RFQ, so again, the document, will take a couple of months to draft, and then we recommend at least 90 days on the street just because it's a complex project, which would put issuing the RFQ to developers in July and award sometime in October. So just an idea of kind of where we are from a timeline perspective. And then Attorney Wright did add some information to this memo that wrote to remind you that we are currently being sued by several assembly members to stop demolition, and the jury trial on that is set for August. So those are your dates. I know they're hard to keep in your mind, but that's why you have a memo to help.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Questions from the Assembly? Mr. Steininger, Ms. Wall, and then Ms. Uscandies.
So if we have a jury trial set for August regarding the demolition, why would we actually award the contract May 18th? Is that just, we can't wait until after August since we've already issued the RFP, or kind of why are we still moving forward with the RFP if we can't, I presume we can't demolish prior to a jury is set?
Thank you for the question. So there's nothing in the lawsuit that prevents us from going forward with the demolition. There's been no orders by the court to stop the demolition. The issues are very closely related to the demolition and the development of Telephone Hill, but there's no order stopping the demolition.
Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. When we talked about the, I'm going to forget the term you used, the criteria or what was the term you used? I can use the right
We
one.
worked through a statement of objectives.
Statement of objectives, thank you. You had drafted, or staff had drafted something, we provide some feedback. I think we said we would look at it again at some point. Is that baked into this process? Only because there were a few last things that I been noodling on, but may have missed that window.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did not get the direction that you wanted to look at the statement of objectives again. The message that I received was that it was fairly close and you gave a little bit of feedback. Now that statement of objectives is what's being used to draft our request for proposals for someone to draft a request for qualification. So it is still very early in the process of, you know, refining exactly what you want.
Ms. Candies.
I didn't have a question, Mr. Chair.
Thought I did, but I think they've both been answered. Madam Mayor, did you want to talk about your proposal?
Sure, be happy to, and if Madam Clerk will bring my map up to the screen, that'd be great. So, spending time with all of you a lot lately with the budget and spending a lot of time in the office with budget stuff and the flood coming upon us, an election coming upon us, I think it's nice to get Telephone Hill off our plate. However, my main reason for doing this is just the public outcry, not to spend any more money on Telephone Hill. I want to make it quite clear that I'm not doing anything with the houses. That is not my intent to save the houses. My intent is to get this off of the plate. I don't care if the houses are demolished, hate to say that. But the idea is to divide Telephone Hill into 3 lots, and our lands manager did this for me. So property 1, we would keep that and reserve that for either Coast Guard housing or workforce housing. Mr. Blydorn said we could probably get 20 to 30 units there, and then sell the other 2 as is for property number 2 and property number 1. So the advantage of this is, number 1, we show that we're listening to the public when they're saying, don't spend any more money on Telephone Hill. We also are caring for Coast Guard housing or workforce housing, so we are getting some multifamily housing up there. If you look at our current schedule for our RFQ, it's right in the busy time of our contractors. And talking to several of the contractors, they don't even know if they'll have time to respond to an RFQ. So this gets, changes their timeline so they could just purchase it and then deal with that another time. Also, Gross Alaska Theater is moving along with their units, and they have roughly 20 units. And I think if you look at a market analysis, 20 to 40 units, well, actually 2 of them are 20. So 40-ish units downtown without parking, I think are going to capture that market. I don't know that there's much more market for that there. So disadvantages, of course, is no one may bid. We may not get bids for this. We also lose control over the project, which at one time I know that we've all said that we'd like control, but the more control you put on it, the less likely you're going to have someone go for it. And the homeowners may go in together and buy these lots. So that is also a risk we would have to take. But in a nutshell, this is my plan, just to move quickly and see what we can do.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Questions on this proposal? Ms. Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mayor, who are the homeowners in this instance? I'm not aware of any homeowners in these properties.
The people, we're the homeowners, the people that used to reside in those homes. Sorry, my fault.
So that, well, it's very clear because people are confused and there's a lot of public misinformation. So there are no homeowners.
No homeowners, we're the owner of the residences, yes. So the former.
And they were
owner-
never,
Former
owned.
home occupants.
Thank you.
Sorry for that confusion.
You, Mr. Steininger, and then Ms. Wall. Ms. Wall, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. For the mayor, I mean, what are you hoping for on these? I mean, we have a responsibility to put these lands to the best use. And so I'm curious we've done a lot of research on what can and can't be feasible up there. What is in your perfect world, what are you hoping is going to happen at property 2 and property 3? And what would make you think that you'd get that?
Okay, so my perfect world I'll ignore property 1 for right now. So property 2 or 3 that contractors would, they would be bought by contractors, developers, what do you ever want to call them, and they would figure out a project on their own time, and then they could come back to us through the Affordable Housing Fund process and then get money what they want for their individual process. right now, I just think there's a lot of, we're not sure what's going to happen, and we're putting a lot of, like I said, my biggest concern, talking with every major developer in town at this point, my biggest concern is they're not going to have the bandwidth to try and respond to this RFQ. So I know that we're looking at outside contractors too, but we've had marginal success with outside contractors.
Mr. Steininger, Steve Scandies.
Thank you. I'm looking at the boundaries that you've drawn on property too, and this probably is more a question for Mr. Blydorn, but there's that one of the homes goes across that boundary. And how does that get cared for in this? Is it just a problem for the person who purchases it, or are we going to care for it before we put it for sale?
I wasn't going to care for anything. Like I said, Mr. Blydorn drew these things, so we would have to ask him. Unfortunately, he's not feeling the best tonight, and I don't know if he's online or not.
I'm sorry, is the question that what home do you see that's?
Doesn't that home that's right along Second Street, doesn't it cross that property line?
So
Yeah.
the way the ordinance is written is it lists each property, and some of the homes do cross property lines because the property lines in that area are quite jumbled, which means that if anyone wanted to sell individual parcels, it would need to be replatted. But I don't think there's an issue with the clusters of properties as envisioned in this map.
Ms. Scandies. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the pieces of feedback we received from local contractors was that it was super political and nobody wanted the eyes on them, I guess, for demoing homes that there was a well-organized, group of citizens who were invested in, and people had just recently gotten evicted from the city, and they said that, that was feedback we received. So I guess my question is, based on that feedback and that data that we already have, what makes you think that property 2 or property 3 would ever get developed with houses on them now?
I can't wave my magic wand and say that, but 2 developers I've talked to said actually having the houses were a benefit, especially the one with the 5-plex, because they could rent that while they developed their plan. The biggest thing for them was more the eviction than the demolish, because evicting would be much harder and much more political than actually demolishing the houses. So I don't know if you watched today, Marine Park was down in an hour.
Thanks. Well, I know the demoing itself is not hard.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Mayor, for coming up with the idea and proposal here. Community member had given a suggestion about modifying the property 2 to encompass the last house that's on the corner there of property 1. And that would definitely make property 1 a lot more feasible to, start developing immediately, just because it wouldn't have any structure there. There'd be no demo cost associated with the municipality if we're trying to help a developer like that. And then it would put all the homes into the 2 lots and give the greatest benefit to whatever purchaser would come up for the lots. But I also hear what the concerns are from a lot of people on whether, the way that we structure this kind of sale, whether that's going to only, catalyze or primer the wealthiest organizations or developers to get those lots specifically. So I think if we do choose this route and choose some type of bid process, that we set it at a really low threshold or open to all offers. And that way, I understand trying to maximize the most financial value, but the highest dollar amount doesn't always translate to the greatest community benefit.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you for that. I'll answer the first one. Again, Mr. Blydorn drew these, but property 1, we have it specifically that size because I asked developers, how big of size would you need for a 20 to 30 unit thing, and that's where that size of that lot came from. And it's actually 6 little lots put together, and it's actually one of the cleanest ones to do. And that's why it's there. Again, I'm saying this publicly. I don't care about the houses. I'm trying to give something for us to build off of. And your second thing is, on a sealed competitive bid, you can have people bid for it that don't meet the minimum. But at the same time, you have to have a minimum that's worthy of this land. And $2 million and $1 million is a pretty low price for this land, especially the one with a 5-plex on it. So there's value to the land already. And the property number 2, I think, is actually the jewel of the hill, and put $1 million, that's not an unreasonable amount of money. Again, talked to several contractors, and they weren't disagreeing with this, except for one who probably talked to you. But for a sealed competitive bid, we would look at all offers, but of course, if they meet our threshold, we're going to take those.
Mr. Kelly, I see your hand.
Thank you. So I was just wondering for a little more clarification on the plan with property 1. So we wouldn't be investing any more funds in property 1. We'd be holding on to it for a certain amount of time. I guess, like, how do we know that the time we dispose of it, that it's going to be, I guess, what's the plan? Like, is the plan that we're going to be basically doing the same process that we're currently doing with the entire telephone hill with just property 1? Are we just going to sell it with maybe some conditions that a developer does something, or what would be the plans for property 1?
It could still be left to the body, but I wanted to keep one piece of property to help us reach our goals for this whole hill. But my guess is we would end up demolishing that property on there. And again, it's the flattest. We probably wouldn't do the whole property as a building or something, because we do have state legislative parking up there behind the spam can. But it's the flattest piece, the easiest piece to build. So then we would go out for RFQs for that one to see what projects we could get there, especially for U.S. Coast Guard.
I had just a quick question. I'm sorry if I missed it in the materials. Where did the numbers for the minimum acceptable bids?
Mr. Blydorn.
Okay.
I just, with assessing the properties, and like I said, I ran them by some contractors and they said they were reasonable. Doesn't mean anybody will bid there, but they said they were reasonable.
Thank you. Ms. Euskandis, then Mr. Brooks.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, because I had the pleasure of meeting with Mr. Blydorn on the lands packet. We talked about this a little bit, but this 1 million and this 2 million, I would not put a lot of, maybe wag is not the correct term, but you know, I think Ms. Wall already used the term best and highest use, which is what we have to do with all pieces of land because we're custodians of that. But we don't ask local contractors what they think the land is worth before we sell it to local contractors. And I appreciate staff giving us something so to try to aid us in this discussion. But these are very, I would just say, like, let's not spend. I just wanted to add that context based on my conversation with him, this $1 and $2 million, because I think we all know the value of a 5-plex with a view and everything is pretty high. Like,
Yeah, again, he came up with the numbers. So I didn't, yeah. Right. So we don't know what we want, but we need the minimum, and that's what we put at the minimum. We could get a bazillion more, or we could get nobody meeting the minimum. It's hard to say at this point.
Madam Manager.
Thank you. I just want to add, when it comes to a starting place, much like our discussion on City Hall, the purpose of sealed competitive bid is that the marketplace will determine the value of that. So there's a lot less interest in making sure, there could be a lot less interest in making sure you have the right number. You could also get that property appraised and make sure that we get appraised value for it. That's another common way that we deal with a sealed competitive bid. And then I wanted to just go back a little bit to the comment about lot lines. These are messy lots and they have encumbrances and all these other things. And I think, not to speak for the mayor, but the vision is that that would be something that the new owner would have to deal with. So when the new owner is thinking about the value, they're also thinking of like encumbrances and things like that. And that would be covered if we got an appraisal.
Mr. Brooks, I do next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had just made the comments related to the bidding process, kind of with just the thought that it's just like, if Disney came in with $5 million for one of the lots, and there's a community group that came together with 1 million for the lot, and I would, I don't know about the others, but I would prefer the community group over, the larger corporate interest, at the sake of getting the more funds, and that's, by not having, the minimums at where they're at, you might get, you won't be worried about if someone's going to apply, a bunch of people are going to reply, and you might get some individuals, some small community groups, and just a more diverse group of people who would show interest, if you didn't have like those kind of specific price thresholds. But as my question is, if we choose to go down this route and do the sale of the lots with the houses on it and designate the one for some sort of development, how would that adjust or modify the request for bid on demolition? Would we be able to edit what has currently gone out, or do we have to do a completely new one?
My recommendation would be to cancel this bid and then repost for just what we're looking for. And in that case, the dollar value would be likely much lower and not require assembly approval.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Would we be able to use the current one as a basis for the new one, or would it require an equal amount of work to what had to go into it?
I'm sure there'd be some work in repackaging a bid, but we have all the information, right? We have all the hazardous materials testing and the plans, I mean, the design work basically. So I think it would be minimal effort.
Thank you.
Any further questions on this proposal? Seeing none. Mr. Brooks, did you have another?
It would be more so just aimed at the members of the body. I know that the mayor had spoke with developers on, the amount of units that can be built in that type of area, but I just want to see what everyone else thinks. I know that the 150 number that initially took us down this road is not doable with this layout, but only 20 to 30, or considering the other types of developments happening, even less, but more rooms for families. Just kind of wanted to see what other people were thinking.
I guess I can respond. We, maybe at some point we should try a motion here and can discuss that. I mean, I think the mayor did say if we go this way, we do lose. I mean, as the ordinance currently written, beyond development will be for housing. We lose. We do not have control of that. I mean, someone could win and put up a mansion, or keep it the same, or maybe we lose control. So anyway, maybe that wasn't your exact question, but I think it would be, my response would be, we don't know what's going to happen, and I haven't heard of people just evaluating these property 2 and property 3. So So maybe I shouldn't have been the one to respond to your question. Madam Mayor, do you have a motion?
Certainly, I move ordinance serial number 2026-XX, since that doesn't have a number yet, to the full assembly, and just briefly speak to it, just to say, this is in response to all the public outcries not to spend more money on Telephone Hill.
Thank you. Objections? Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I object to this. It's funny, I object to this on so many levels that it's hard to know where to start. Because, and I guess I'll say process-wise, maybe I'm interested in hearing, I think, kind of what Mr. Brooks was trying to elicit, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my read on the motion that passed at the last meeting was to bring this back and talk about like where we are we going? Do we still feel good? How are we going to get there? And then we have this from the mayor, which is just one person's, I will say, crazy idea with love. I wouldn't say that to anyone else, but with the mayor, I feel like I can. And I retract that. I'm sorry. But I may not. So this to me is like a whole other thing. So maybe I'm partially, before I start talking about why I don't like this thing, interested in knowing how you would want this to proceed. Do we have a motion for this? So do we want to talk about this? Is that really where we
Yep,
are?
yep,
Okay,
we should
okay,
do that.
okay. I object to this. I don't understand, at the heart of this, the sponsor statement is that this is about not spending any more funding on this project. I don't see like A following B necessarily. This seems to try to care for other issues, which is to leave some of that land back to where it might not turn into what our current plans are for it. It does preserve a small amount for our housing goals, but even that, I don't see how that coincides with the goal of not spending any more money. I think I don't see this, if that is indeed your intended goal, as the best way to move forward with that. Maybe I'll stop there and see what other members have to say, and then I might have more comments later.
Ms. Wall and Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'll object as well. I feel like this is trying to get what we want without using any of the things that we've learned through our 2 years of planning. I believe that the mayor does want housing up there, and we've heard from extensive outreach and research that no one can build housing up there unless we intervene in some specific ways, particularly providing this land for free, developing it ourselves, taking the buildings down, doing the hazardous waste management. I know that costs money. That's what it's going to take to build housing in this community. I feel like we're starting to hear a narrative that, our budget, that we're in a budget crisis and that's more important than our housing crisis. I do not think we're in a budget crisis. We are in complete control of our budget. The assembly can balance the budget, and the voters can change their mind on revenue if they don't like how we balance the budget. The housing crisis, on the other hand, impossible to solve. The only way we are going to make headway is with investing resources. I think it is a good use of city resources. I've heard some people say don't need housing. We have hundreds of people on the street. We have hundreds of Coast Guard families coming, and we have thousands of homes in the valley right now that are in danger of not being habitable. I think it is an excellent use of resources to, to focus on a big impact project. We don't have, I would hope that if we don't use this money on Telephone Hill, that we invest it in other housing projects, none of which will have the same impact that this project will.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to speak to Assemblymember Hugh Scangi's comment about, just the intention, how this was brought up and things like that. And, my thoughts very much were that the type of investment that's involved with it, it's like no one could build on that lot unless it required millions of dollars in development investment when the parameter was for 100 to 150 units. Of course, no one can build those types of things at those as it is with the landscape and everything. But 20 to 40 is like you don't have to blast out half the mountain, brings down the cost and makes it a lot more digestible for just developers in general, especially local ones. But I said it even at that meeting, it's just like there's going to be some level of development that happens there for sure. But whether it's fair to put the financial burden on the taxpayer to leverage the funds for millions of dollars just to get the basis to start building something, those funds can definitely be leveraged better in other areas to have a more impactful result on the housing issue. And, we do get kind of orbital around the Hill when the discussion comes up and it gets, very narrow, as like, a sense of urgency kind of comes up, like we have to do this or else we're not making the type of progress that we should be making. And, through the years of the affordable housing grant and then private developers getting rezones and even the city rezones all along, Auk Bay, West Douglas, the issue is being addressed in full force on many different facets across the community. And the way I see this project specifically is like the slimmest margin for effectiveness. The area is highly desirable. The need in that area is very great, but the cost associated with development doesn't outweigh it, I believe.
I'll chime in for a comment if no one else does. I'm going to oppose the motion. I understand and see where the mayor is trying to go. I mean, this has been a challenge for us. However, and this may be at some point where we go. For now, I have an idea, and so depending on if this fails or does not, I would move, or someone else could move, to not award the bid to demolish until after the results of the RFQ have been returned, to see what people think and hear and get real proposals on how to develop this, see what can be done, or, costs and that type of thing. I want to see that. There is uncertainty now that will provide more, getting that RFQ back, because this could be an area that, it could be a transformative project for downtown and for our housing crisis. We own it. It is downtown. Housing downtown can help stimulate economic activity that even a property half a mile away or further, does not. So I'll oppose it again. We may get here eventually, but I want to see what else we can get. And again, that will be a motion, or one also, something that I'll support should this one not pass. Ms. Hall.
I'm going to support the mayor's motion, and for the reason she has stated, you know, the funds, we've got a very clear mandate that we need to, you know, we just flat out can't afford it right now. The other would be, you know, not only as the community said, you know, don't spend money to demolish those homes. Well, this is, you know, the homes, at least the majority of them will be preserved. I don't support breaking up property one. And that will allow community members to come together. And if there's a vision for that, I support that. I think that would, you know, if we can do something there, that's great. And the third reason I support this is dragging this out any longer. The drain on staff time is incredible when we are facing, you know, the GLOF is such a big issue for our community, and our staff is working so hard on that. And I think just, you know, dragging this out, especially if we don't have, you know, if contractors really don't have the time to carefully put together an RFQ, and I just see that this is really dragging it out. And I think, you know, we need to, as the mayor said, get this off our plate and move on to the bigger issues we're facing. And this meets both the not spending money on it and giving the locals an opportunity to come up with something that they're envisioning. Thank you.
Mr. Steininger.
I'm going to speak, I guess, in opposition of this motion. I've been going back and forth on this all day as I've been thinking about and talking to people. And I want to echo some of what Deputy Mayor Smith said. I think there's other opportunities that if we move forward, you know, maybe if this fails, a motion to delay demolition and see what can be done with the hill. At the end of the day, this may be where we land. You know, I don't look at this proposal and say, oh, this is awful. But when I look at it, I see splitting up the hill. If somebody has a cohesive vision for what it is, things that we've been talking about, solving density in downtown, solving housing problems in downtown. You know, since I moved into downtown, you know, over 100 units have been demolished within, you know, a block of where I live on downtown since I've moved in. And they haven't been replaced with other units. We need to restore that density, especially as we see other economic drivers leaving downtown. You know, less workforce in downtown. We're going to move City Hall out of downtown. There are a lot of the economic drivers that create vibrancy in our downtown that are starting to fade, and it's definitely hurting the ability for us to have a centralized and economically vibrant area. And I think there are options, but I also think that we need to make sure we are open to as many options as we can, because I think there's a lot of interesting things you could do where you don't demolish every home. You maybe have some infill. It could work within this layout, but it could also work with a single owner buying the entire property with a different vision and mindset. And we've spent so much time and so much political capital getting to the point that we're at today to try to get answers to those questions of what this area can look like, that I worry that kind of at the last minute veering over because we don't want to be talking about this issue anymore is not necessarily the right reason to stall and delay. But again, I don't dislike this plan. I think when I look at it, this very well could be the most viable way that we go. I just think that we're still working towards information on what the cohesive look for this area could be. But again, I don't, not to speak to something that's not the motion, don't necessarily think we should demolish all the homes, as we're still working on that as well. So I think there's a middle of the road option here that we can see a better vision of what this area can look like. So maybe at some time in the future I can support this idea. I just don't think I can today.
Thank you for those comments. Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, sorry. I think just a couple of other things that I wanted to say. I appreciate Ms. Wall's comments because I do think that's kind of, that's rolled into this, because if this sets out to not spend any more money on this project or not to spend any more money on housing, then right there, I am fundamentally opposed to this, because if we all sat in on a beautiful sunny day on a Saturday and talked about how we don't have any money, but I think if we are to the point that we are saying we can't afford to invest in housing whatsoever, and we're hoping that other forces, or we'll use non-monetary forces to try to affect it, then I would say we are making the wrong choice, because I do not think that will affect this crisis. I also appreciate some of Mr. Brooks's comments about all the other things we're doing, and I agree. Those are all good and necessary, but I find that to continue that forward momentum that we have made after getting 5 years of the Affordable Housing Fund and the city doing more and more within to affect that housing crisis, I feel like I don't want us to lose that momentum. I also feel like I have to address, because it's in this plan and it's in some of the comments that have been made by members on the body. When we talk about responding to the community, who is the community that we are responding to? When we say the community said X, or the community has asked us to do Y, some members of the community have asked us to do X, or some have said Y. It is our job as assembly members to consider the entire community and to consider whether the people who take the time to come sit in the chairs and provide us testimony, which we do greatly appreciate, and write us letters, we have to hold that in one hand and hold all the information we have, all the testimony we get in other places or don't get, and the data points we have or don't have, and make decisions in that way. And so I feel like, I mean, we all know from sitting through all these meetings, we have heard testimony from Telephone Hill, and they have been very organized and very committed to this issue. At every chance to be at public testimony. And my concern is that we have heard the same message from them over and over, almost to the extent that we have forgotten about all of the work that we have done ourselves. So from where I sit, to say that this is responsive to the community, I would say it is not. I would say is responsive to a very organized group of people who have been organized against this plan from the beginning, starting with the very first public listening sessions that I went to at the Jack. And so I just think that's important for us when we're talking about whether we're responding to the public on the budget, or we're on our spending decisions, on how we impact with housing, that are we truly responding to the community, or are we responding to a portion of the community? Also, I just want to talk about staff time, and folks have brought up the GLOF. Crossing one thing off our list is not going to, staff time is a real thing, limited capacity is a real thing, but not wanting to hear from a certain group anymore is not going to make us any more adept at meeting the GLOF. I also don't know, based on my knowledge, I don't need a memo to tell me where we are in the process. We got to the very end of the process to where we had a bid out for demolition. And I don't know why we would say at that point in the process, you know what, this is, now we need to, we've created a division here, and we need to listen to the community. I think that's all I have.
Mayor Weldon.
Thank you. And so it's not just the Telephone Hill people. There's lots of people that I know, lots of emails that have come on, just don't spend the 5.5. But it was also in our budget survey that we put out. Only 23% of the people said that we should be spending money on housing development. That's the community. But we don't need to sit and debate this. I can count the votes already, so let's just take the vote.
Seeing no other comments, we have a motion and objection. Ms. Hendricks, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. For the draft ordinance titled, an ordinance authorizing the manager to dispose of a portion of Telephone Hill properties through competitive sealed bid. Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Ms. Hughes Candies,
No.
Ms. Wall,
No.
Mr. Steininger,
No.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. All,
Yes.
Ms. Adkisson,
No.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Smith.
No.
Motion fails with 5 nays and 4 yeas.
I'm open to making a motion, or Mr. Brooks.
I just wanted to say for your motion, would it be going out or waiting for a response from the RFQ for 100 to 150 units, or all possible options of development? Or he had said it already. I don't know.
Right. Maybe I should make a motion first. Madam Mayor, you'll take the gavel.
Mr. Smith, you have a motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the award, that to not award the bid to demolish the homes on Telephone Hill until after results from the RFQ are returned.
Any objection? Ms. Wall, you were the first one. You want to speak to your objection?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that Mr. Smith, and I know others who have spoken to this motion, including Mr. Steininger, believe in the vision that I believe in. So I'm appreciative of that, and I'm excited to work with you all towards this vision. I don't think this step is the best one. We just did research. We just hired a consultant to go ask developers if they're interested in doing this. And they said yes. We've said multiple people said, yes, we will put in an RFQ. I feel confident that we're going to move this project forward more quickly. And if we move forward in the strategic way that we did, that we planned originally, which was take the uncertainty out of this project for the developers, make sure they know we are serious about doing this, and that we're willing to do the hard steps and invest the money by doing it first. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Ms. Hughes Candies, I saw you next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with much of what Ms. Wall just said. I think this is just a order of operations, and I very much understand the desire to want to get a little bit more certainty, and also just to see some example points before moving on to demolition. But I feel like and I would agree, I am excited that I do still think we want to see something built up there, and it may not be 150 units, but to demonstrate that, not just to demonstrate, but truly to make it, to help move that process forward, just order of operations wise, based on the research in the past, but also because that does commit us to that course of action. I think if we do an RFQ now, it's almost like replicating an earlier step of the process where we're sort of designing we're not designing, but I think that RFQ is destined to fail. I think even this is good that we're having this conversation, but even to have this conversation, all the headlines were like last minute upset. And so investors and developers don't like that uncertainty. And so I think the previous order of operations sets us up to succeed, and we will hear what real RFQ, we will hear really what it will take from them specifically to make the project work for them individually. But if we do it this other way, I don't think people are going to give us sincere, they may not respond at all. So that's my concern.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. And Ms. Atkinson, did you have your hand up? I missed somebody down there. Mr. Brooks, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the conversation that we're having here, and I do want to get the housing issue addressed, but also, and it really is just for the most financially practical ways. And there's very few contractors in town that are capable of doing high density, large apartment buildings. And, but there are plenty of contractors who can do some apartment buildings. If we want to make sure that we will for sure get responses, get a good grouping of responses, making the types of developments a little more open for that ask, I think would generate some good results for us, and ultimately lead to what the best decision would be for the housing issue and the community. And then as far as just the volatility of the issue, if you will, it's something that I haven't really seen in the community before, and that's people from every single walk, every single group, every corner of the community. There's people from all these areas that have come together kind of on this common idea that it's not financially sound being planned as is. In addition to the demolition, the majority of this demolition cost is just to ship out the hazardous material. We can't even handle our own material, and we're asking the taxpayer to be responsible for millions of dollars in shipping costs, and that's not even building anything. So that's what I'm talking about when using the money for the best practical and immediate impact. That millions of dollars can go far, way further in other areas than, just shipping stuff down south and letting, the materials be someone else's problem. So that's why halting the request for a bid on the demolition, because if we make it to where the RFQ is for any type of development so that we can elicit that more robust response to it, and then, the most practical response is someone was like, oh, well, I'm going to do something more incremental infill, or, zone it out like the mayor was thinking and just do this one. And that attractive response wouldn't necessarily require the full allocation that we're thinking of and plan for demolition as it's being presented and put out for bid right now. So I think to Assemblymember Smith's motion, just waiting to see what those responses are, making it a little more open so that we get more responses, might drastically change the need for the costs associated with demolition.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. We have Mr. Steininger and then Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief because a lot has been said on this. I have a concern with taking an irrevocable action before we know what can be done on the Hill. And so I think it's more prudent to get those responses to the RFQ, before we take irrevocable action, because I don't want to be in a situation where, we've done demolition and then suddenly, the mayor's plan that's still up on the screen no longer is really an option to us because those properties are all demolished. And so if we get responses to the RFQ that are, require too much from us, because that could happen. We could demolish this and get back responses that require too much from the city that we can't afford to put into affordable housing based on the decisions that we're going to have to make over the next couple months. And so I don't want to take an action that we can't undo in advance of getting that information. And so, and then it has the added benefit of providing an opportunity to the people who have been pretty vocal coming in to say that they think there's a different plan and a different vision that might look better for Juneau. I tend to lean more towards density, I think, than the plan that they've shown us, but reversing the order of what we're doing gives them the opportunity to convince me otherwise. And, that it's a big hurdle, but, they might come in with something that looks great, requires less money from the city, gets us halfway to the density that we want, or something along those lines. And if we choose to demolish now, we don't even get to hear that idea. And so that's why I think we should just simply change the sequencing. May set us back a little bit in timeline if it still goes the way that we intended it to go, but I think it's worth taking that risk of a slight delay to give a little more certainty to where we can land at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steininger, Mr. Kelly, and then Mr. Smith. And then I'll.
Thank you. No, thank you. And actually, the benefit of going after Mr. Steininger is he basically said everything I wanted to say, except more eloquently. I think this does give us a little more control over the process based off of any new information that crops up. So I support the deputy mayor's motion.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree. Mr. Steininger, I think, captured the general reason for what I'm doing, so we know more before we decide to spend some of the demolition money. Anyway, to clear the property there. And I do have concerns on this. I don't think of this as, I think this is just a slight change in the project. I don't think of it as a stop or anything like that. I understand and have concerns in terms of what kind of responses we get, though some of those may be out of our control: construction costs of borrowing, that type of thing. And with that, I will offer an amendment to hopefully see if this will help. And that's in addition to my motion, but to support that the manager prioritize efforts to solicit and encourage responses to the RFQ. And I'd ask for unanimous consent.
You need to repeat that whole thing then, because that doesn't make sense to me.
Sure. The original motion I had was to not award the bid to demolish until after the results from the RFQ are returned. And my amendment is to support the manager prioritizing efforts to solicit and encourage responses to the RFQ. And that's just so that we give strong direction and support to the manager, because this has been a sticky wicket. And I want to show that if people, I want to get good information, and I want her to, her and the team to go and try to get good responses to the RFQ. People may not vote for the whole motion, but if we can show that we support her going to get those, get good responses to the RFQ, I think that would be a good sign. So that's why I'm offering it as an amendment.
We have an amendment. Do we have an objection? Ms. Atkinson, you're jumping in there.
I mean, just to ask the city manager, were you planning on sandbagging the RFQ, or would this change your behavior in any way? I kind of figure you would want an RFQ to be successful if you're putting the effort in.
Thank you for that question. No, my plan is to implement your direction in the most efficient and expeditious way possible. I will tell you that my job gets harder the closer to 5-4 you get on your decisions. And that is just a natural consequence of having 9 bosses.
Perfect. So we have an amendment. Ms. Agason, are you keeping your objection? And see no objection, that amendment passes, so we're back to the main motion, so I'll speak because I think everybody that wanted to speak spoke. I'm gonna have to side with Ms. Hughes-Gandy's on this, I know, crazy. Anyway, without having a totally different plan, which failed, I think you go back to your original plan, and I know all you folks said, you know, we might see something different. At this point in our lives, if we haven't seen anything different, we're not going to see anything different. So without having something totally a unique perspective. So I will be a no vote on this. So we have a motion and we have objection. Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For Deputy Mayor Smith to motion to not award the bid to demo until after results from the RFQ are returned. Deputy Mayor Smith,
Well, it's a motion as amended. Yep.
as amended, apologies.
So you want to read the whole thing now? Sorry.
Will do. To not award the bid to demo until after results from the RFQ are returned with the amendment to support the manager to prioritize efforts to solicit and encourage responses to the RFQ. Deputy Mayor Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Wall,
No.
Mr. Kelly,
Sorry, hit the wrong button. Yes.
Ms. Adkisson,
No.
Mr. Steininger,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Hughes-Gandy's,
No.
Madam Mayor.
No,
Motion carries with 5 yeas and 4 nays.
sorry, Madam Manager. I'll give the gavel back.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have one last item. Ms. Wall.
Quickly, thank you, Mr. Smith. I'll just say to the manager's point, you know, I'm committed to this project as I was before that vote. That's not how I wanted it to go. I think we'll have a less likelihood of success, but I'm still willing to keep going and see what we get. So I don't think that speaks to a 5-4 that indicates a divided assembly on interest in continuing to move forward on Telephone Hill.
Ms. Hughes-Gandy's.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence. And just to be really brief, I do want to say, just again, I really appreciate the conversation and I do feel more consensus. You know, I left the meeting where that resulted in this meeting. So I was very like thrown for a loop, but I really do hear more consensus than not. And I will also say out loud that I agree that if we can't, you know, we're shooting right now for the moon. If we can't get to the moon, I'll be happy to get to the space station, you know, whatever medium density, you know, just to see that more. And I hear that and I see people's commitment to that and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we should take a short break. Let's come back at 8:05. I'll bring the committee of the whole back to order. We are now on to our third and final agenda topic for the evening, gondola / gold belt response. Madam Manager, if you'd
Thank
lead
you,
us
Deputy.
off. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. You'll recall that the last time we talked about the gondola, we were all kind of waiting with bated breath for Gold Belt's response to a series of questions that the Eagle Crest Board proposed. So this topic is before you tonight, mostly to give you that information and just provide you, we know more information, so we're sharing that with you. At the April 1st Finance Committee meeting, you did give direction to terminate the RSA and repay Gold Belt exercising all methods of compensation. You also directed the Eagle Crest Board to continue searching for other investors for the gondola project. As you are very aware, we are collecting $70,000 a month on interest, in interest on the amount that we owe Gold Belt. I do want to note, though, that we invest our funds at a rate of return of 3 to 4%. So, you know, you can kind of half that as far as true impact to the budget. I don't know if that provides any peace of mind, but it's worth noting. Terminating the RSA has we still have to make policy decisions on what to do after terminating the RSA. And I'm not here to ask you to make those today, but we will most definitely come back. And one of those policy decisions is, do we just cut our losses and liquidate all the parts and pieces of the gondola, of which, you know, we're estimating we could get about 1.5 to 2.75 million for doing that. But there are costs associated with that, like storage of the gondola parts. We have parts in Austria at this time, and that could take a long time. The other kind of side of that coin is we could retain those parts and pieces because we have a, 99% designed gondola and all the parts and pieces for this mountain, and marketing that to an outside investor is certainly something that this body has expressed interest in. So I just wanted to let you know that one of the challenges with the question of like how much can we retain on the can we recover on this project is there's so many if this then that elements to the gondola project. As a reminder, repayment on May 1st is a little over $12 million. We have about 3.3 million left in the project account. However, there's lots of, again, moving pieces and encumbrances, and I'd like to leave at least $500,000 in that account to cover some of those, which is why you get to a recommendation at the end of the memo of a $9.5 million in fund balance. The RSA does talk about being able to pay back Gold Belt with lease payments on the aerial tramway. Those lease payments are $272,000 a year, so don't make a significant dent in that, but that was something that was included in the RSA. So I want to talk a little bit about the direction on other means of compensation. I inferred that to be land because of course, Gold Belt does have interest in some CBJ property, but I want to be explicit that I don't feel like you guys have like given me authority to negotiate the land transfer of X, Y, and Z, right? You kind of are like, let's start exploring that process, which again is another reason to have this conversation with you today. There are a couple pieces of property that Gold Belt has definitely expressed an interest in. That the aerial tramway, of course, that is, we own the land where they base their tram out of, and they have a lease with us. So we just renewed a 35-year lease for that piece of property and those air rights. And that appraised value is a little over $3 million, according to an appraisal in May of 2025. Gold Belt's also been interested in a sliver of property over by the Port and Harbor office. We call it the Seadrome building. They have visions to demo that building and create some more office space for docks and harbors, some tourist attractions, and a lot of amenities for our community and our visitor industry. But to do that, we have this kind of awkward piece of property, and they have requested purchase of that. It was appraised at $650,000. Docks and Harbors board was like, we're not making any more of this waterfront, and waterfront's really valuable. So ultimately countered at a price that Gold Belt was not amenable to. So that negotiation reached a stalemate. The other piece of property that I don't necessarily know the interest in, but there is a map in your supplemental. Just to remind you that while Gold Belt owns a lot of the waterfront in Douglas, on West Douglas, we own land right above that. So like the Pioneer Road is CBJ property, and then once it stops, there's a lot of Gold Belt property beyond that. So again, not to say that there's an interest in that, but certainly that's proximity of one of their projects. So I want to be clear that I think the Docks and Harbors Board would have a very strong opinion on a land transfer for any of these properties. That's not something that, I haven't consulted the Docks and Harbors Board on this topic. Mayor and I did make an invitation to meet with the board chair while Port Director Yukotel is out of town, but certainly there are other things to consider. Kind of given all of those variables that are in the air, and what an appraiser values land, what we value land at, what we value giving up an asset that returns, a significant amount of money in perpetuity to our Docks and Harbors Fund. My recommendation is that we just appropriate the funds to terminate the RSA and still entertain negotiations with Gold Belt, still have conversations with Gold Belt. I will point out that Eagle Crest board submitted a letter to Gold Belt with a number of really thoughtful questions that were generated from that April 1st meeting. Like, hey, would you be interested in completing the gondola project? Would you be interested in operating Eagle Crest? Would you be interested in these different scenarios? And the response that you have in your packet is, we'll keep talking, but until we reach a different agreement, we're existing under the current RSA. And so my recommendation is we can still have those conversations. We can still, talk about transferring assets and other operational agreements. I want to note that anything that is transferring assets and kind of the negotiation of cash would be in my purview as the manager. But certainly once you're talking about anything that is the operations of Eagle Crest, that is in the purview of the Eagle Crest board. So there's that piece that I want to make sure that we respect however we move forward on this. So that is the summary, and why I am asking you to not only move to introduce the attached ordinance to terminate the RSA, which you did at your last meeting, but also have a corresponding appropriating ordinance of $9.5 million in fund balance and the $2.7 million in the gondola project to be introduced at an April 29th special meeting that would make final passage on May 19th. I do want to point out that appropriation, notwithstanding other assembly decisions, would pretty much zero out your unrestricted fund balance for FY27 as presented in the manager's budget. Obviously, this is your budget now, and you will make a lot of changes to that, but it is definitely a sobering thought. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the assembly? Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the thought of zeroing out unrestricted fund balance is definitely an alarming thought. It's not something that puts us in a good position. So, getting creative with the negotiations. I know that I had mentioned at the last time we were discussing this about utilizing all available assets as far as the land side of that. But, what do you think it would look like, or, the feasibility of structuring it to where, we try and put the value of the gondola against the loan, and then whatever type of operating agreement may get worked out, waiving lease fees for Eagle Crest and the tram, in addition to offering some land and trying to make it up in the sense of not having to dip into that fund balance or any more general fund, but trying to take care of it as much as possible within waiving of lease fees and then trying to put the value of the gondola back into it.
So I think that there are a number of creative options and formulas that we could address. I think all of those take time that are kind of that timing is influenced by the fact that Gold Belt is also a board. So, you know, while I can negotiate with their CEO, ultimately he reports to a board, and you know how quick governing bodies operate. Also, we have two governing bodies to negotiate on our side with the Eagle Crest Board and the Assembly, though ultimately any decision rests with you. All of that is to say, it would be difficult to move quickly if the Assembly's goal is to kind of stop the bleeding and stop the $70,000 in accrued interest, which is why my recommendation is not to stop entertaining creative solutions, negotiations, but to pay Gold Belt off first.
Thank you.
Mayor Wilden.
And just to be clear, if we waive the lease fees, they don't cover the interest, correct?
Well, it's just a matter of, dollars and cents. So if we're accruing $70,000 a year in interest and the lease fees are $272,000, the math is
Not
quickly
in our favor.
not in our favor.
Ms. Uscandies, then Ms. Wall.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My question's about you mentioned the storage cost and then the potential expenses for getting rid of the gondola itself, if that's the way things went. I am looking at two different paragraphs and it's 500,000 roughly for both of those. So could you go over those ones? I'm sorry. Or just re-clarify for me.
Yeah.
the expenses.
So one of the expenses that we are continuing to incur is the storage fees for some of the gondola parts in Austria. We have, in the end, we purchased two gondolas because we needed a second gondola to make it fit with our mountain. So we have the first gondola parts in the here on site. The cars are currently being refurbished in Colorado. And then there are additional towers that are in Austria. Those towers, I think we've got rent paid for through the next couple of months for that, but we estimate that those storage fees, if we continue to store those, to be at least $500,000, for like the next 6 months of storage fees. It's complicated because if we want to put up the gondola as designed in, this mountain, we need those towers and we need to import those towers. And importing, though we've paid for the shipping, we have now tariffs that have been on top of that. So there's additional expense to bringing that infrastructure here, which is why we have let it sit in Austria while all of those things are up in the air. And I know it's confusing because there's a lot of moving parts and makes it hard to wrap your brain around it.
I do appreciate that, and I appreciate your patience with that because I know it's in some ways fairly straightforward, but in other ways not. And then sorry, can I have a follow-up on that same thing? So then the potential expense for, if you were going to then say, let me pay someone to help me get rid of this, and to do that, you need someone who knows ski world and can package it for ski world, but that potentially could be avoided just by, we'd have to deal with the ones that are being stored overseas, but, and I guess the ones that are in Colorado, but you could leave the ones that are on the ground here. You'd just be selling off parts at that point. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think either method of extraction requires additional expenditure because we're either going to have to hire someone to market a used gondola to someone else to put up somewhere else, or market our gondola to put up here. I mean, there's this scenario where we have to do both. We market our gondola to put up here, don't find anyone, and then turn around and market it to be disposed of. So I don't have a cost estimate for, what hiring that professional would be, but we are working on, I know the Eagle Crest Board and staff is working on that cost estimate, so we can bring you more of that information when it comes time for you to make that decision. I mean, it is, you did give the board direction to pursue other investors, but direction to pursue other investors is not the same as investing in all in all that looks like. And so we will bring that back to you.
I had Ms. Wall and then Mayor Weldon.
Thank you, Chair Smith. This is the first time I'm seeing numbers on selling the gondola. Why would we be getting less for it than we paid for it / invested in refurbishing it?
I think the reality is we just don't know what we will get for it. So it's an estimate. Certainly, it's been taken down, right? So it had a different value when it was installed, and someone could go over there and, see it. We do have all the required, like you have to make sure that it's been observed by an engineer to be able to re-put it up. So we've done all of those steps. I mean, in the end, someone will pay for it, what they think it's worth. We bought that gondola 7 years ago now. So, it's also old. It's old technology, which is good for us. We like the fact that it's old and simple technology, but, I think the answer to your question is we have an educated guess based on talking to people in the industry, and certainly wouldn't want to inflate that number because,
Go ahead, Mayor Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the 9.5, so the 9 million comes from the 8 million, 8.7 rounded up basically to 9. And then the 0.5 is your contingency. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. And, it's important. You bring up a good point. There are still unknowns, but so hopefully we can refine that contingency as we close more of those doors.
I have a follow-up.
Go ahead, follow up.
The follow-up would be, so we went from 3.3 million left in the project account, but over in your recommendation is 2.7. How do we lose some along the way?
Well, that's because we'd like that as part of keeping funds in the account to deal with those contingencies. So I want to, that keeps about $1 million in the account. Those expenditures would still need, assembly touch to make some of those big policy decisions that we're talking about. But again, there's unknowns.
I'm just gonna hop in. I don't think I'm not certain it was 7 years ago. It was a long time ago, but I think 7 is too long. 2023 and okay, that's when we made the purchase. There
There's 7 years ago that sticks in my head. I
was a history.
apologize.
No, that's okay.
Uh,
Yeah. I think you might be right in terms of like a discussion or like motion from the
I mean,
board or something.
yeah.
I mean, something, but okay,
We'll get
I
that.
just wanted to make sure. Pardon me, I didn't look around. Were there other questions? Madam Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. So I would move to introduce ordinance serial number 2026-18, terminating the RSA with Gold Belt to the full assembly, accompanied by a appropriating ordinance of 9.5 million in fund balance and 2.7 million in remaining gondola project funds. And ask for unanimous consent. And I'll just speak to it briefly if I can.
Go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Yes, wiping out our fund balance does not make me happy at all, but as you heard the city manager, there's ways that we can claw it back, but the clawing back is going to take time, and I think we should stop paying the interest. What'd you say? Stop the bleeding, and then we can fill it back with other creative ways, mainly selling land. So that's my motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Uscandies.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. One more question, or objecting for a purpose of question. With that 3.3 being in the account and choosing to leave some of it in there for those, dealing with those contingencies, could you just speak to the benefit of doing it that way versus wiping out what's in there for now and then appropriating those things from other sources as they come along? Or why that's your recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, I think we always try to reflect the true cost of anything, and so it would be difficult for me to make a recommendation that's not as close to the true cost. I mean, I'll just tell you, like, when I ask finance how much is left in the account, there's open purchase orders, there's all kinds of things that need to be cleaned up on that account. So I am operating again with the best available information, and like this project that has plagued this project, it's not always complete information. That being said, what I feel like is different is we're taking it to you at every turn so that you have that information. So certainly you can make a decision to, only appropriate some of that, and then it'll take longer to come up with enough money to write the check and get out of the agreement if we don't have, or I'm sorry, then it could take, what's your proposal? I'm sorry.
No, I was saying the opposite. I was saying clean out the gondola completely, and then in dealing with those contingencies, am I missing something, or couldn't you come back as you need that? If you need money to develop something or to hire someone, couldn't you come back? I mean, it's all different colors of money in one place, and I recognize that. But since people keep putting emphasis on cleaning out that, and that's sitting in a gondola fund, for me, I'd want to shake out all the coins of the gondola fund before then I started going into other sources. So I was just trying to understand if there's a reason why not to do that. And I understand that we'll have expenses, but I would rather, I think, deal with those. So I was just trying to see if there's something I was missing.
Sure, Madam.
Ms. Huskini, I'm just making sure. So you would say 3.3 million in the remaining gondola project, and then if there's any contingencies, take them out of general fund as they come up. Is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, I think the manager would have to come to the assembly to do that, just by a process. But yeah, I would say we would deal with those out of general fund as they come up.
I just want to add that we have like existing POs and
Okay.
existing contracts that we do need to fulfill. So I would be uncomfortable with taking it down, like with emptying every penny right now, because I would not be able to. There are some things that we just have to do. Great example. We have to finish refurbishing the cars, because right now they're in pieces at the shop to be refurbished, and they have zero value to us. So even if we want to sell them, we're going to have to finish refurbishing them. And so that's something that we're going to have to complete. That is a different expenditure than a policy decision. That's like, do you want to keep these parts for another year and market them as a Juno project, or do you want to try to liquidate these parts and I'm going to have to hire someone, to do that liquidation? So I guess what I'm asking is that whatever you do, you leave some funding in that account so we can continue to like figure out the business of closing out our obligations in the best way possible. And that's my recommendation in the memo.
Okay, thank you for that. So and to restate that, so then what I'm hearing is, yes, we have 3.3 on this memo, but there are so many open things in there that's not your accurate. Don't go for the entire number. So that's helpful.
I had Mr. Brooks and then Ms. Wall. Oh, excuse me. Yep. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Kelly, and then Mr. Brooks, then Ms. Wall.
Thank you. Just real quick, I didn't hear it in the mayor's motion. Just wanted to clarify that it's her intent to move this to the April 29th meeting.
She is nodding her head affirmative.
Yes, that's my intent, to move it to the April 29th meeting.
I withdraw my objection.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to mention, so we have the just over 3 million left in the account. The value of the equipment itself, just on the loose guess currently, is, 1.5 to 2 million something. If we work it out with Gold Belt that they do want to take over the gondola project, putting that remainder of the fund and then the value, even if it's at a slight loss to us, just to make it easier for them to get, is like, then we're nearly halfway there to what's going to be owed. And then, doing the rest in lieu of leases and land sales becomes a little more manageable. So I think it's strategic to try and, sell the project to Gold Belt, even if it's at a slight loss, for the sake of, the processes and the time that's saved. And then, the logistics having to be figured out from the private industry instead of, a municipal government having to worry about them.
Thank you. That's an objection to the motion. No? Okay. I'm gonna, Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I just, because there's a member of the public and press here, I do want to provide a, maybe a little bit of context around us saying that we're clearing out the general fund. I think what's in our head is that the current manager's budget at the end of FY '27 has about $10 million in it. That is, if our estimates are correct for this year, if we make no cuts, if we don't increase revenue, if we let Eagle Crest go another negative 2.5 million, if we don't sell City Hall and we don't sell the gondola. So just to provide some context for folks, I think this is a horrible situation we find ourselves in, and we definitely need to be careful. But before people start saying that our general fund is empty, I wanted to correct the record that that's the current manager's budget that we are going to be making significant changes to here in a bit.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Wall. I mean, I was saying some of it earlier, and that's also assuming that we get the investment returns that we are projecting and they don't go the other way, and that our sales tax is correct and things. Anyway, a lot of assumptions, but I hear you, and it's good to provide that there's things that can change, but it is still a daunting situation, in my opinion. Madam Mayor.
And to build on Ms. Wall, that's also, the hope is to do some of the things like Mr. Burke is saying, sell the gondola, make a trade in land, and some other things to build back our general fund. So we don't leave it low. We won't say zero out. We'll just say low for the time being.
Thank you. Madam, I have a question for you, so I'll object for the purpose of a question. Madam Manager, you kind of touched on it earlier about, continuing negotiations, or, because our current best, I'm going to say, proposal from Gold Belt is maintain the current RSA. And so in that case, I agree with your recommendation. I guess it's, do you feel empowered to have conversations with Gold Belt? What would you do if they want to have conversations? Do you need?
Yeah, thank you for that
Guidance or
question. I mean,
authority?
I met with McHugh on Friday, so we're on very good speaking terms, and I feel very, the relationship exists to talk to Gold Belt CEO. That being said, the official direction he has from his board is the letter that you have in the packet, which is not, I want to buy the gondola, I want to invest in Eagle Crest. It is, we'll keep talking, but I want to operate under the existing RSA. So I think it's a matter of, what you officially give me the authority to negotiate versus just having conversations with, another party. So I do not feel like at this moment I have the authority to negotiate disposal of city land without the body giving me that authority. Have I had a conversation and said, hey, is this something you'd be interested? That's off, just casual conversation. Yes, I have. And I think there is interest there. So, this is why it's so hard hard for us to negotiate, right? Because we're like negotiating in like open session on TV and there's 9 of you and we're all trying, it's a very complicated, it's just not, we're not good negotiators, not because we're not like savvy deal making people, but because of the nature of how we need to do all of our business out in the open. So did I answer that question for you?
I believe so. I mean, I guess the best thing, or if you were to get an actual proposal, of course you would, bring something to us, or anyway, I'm trying to figure out if we need to. Yeah, I know. The authority pieces. Anyway, I just, trying to, I don't, it's okay.
You have the Eagle Crest board and the Docks and Harbors board now in,
Very good. We have a motion. And was there objection to the motion? Seeing no objection, that motion passes. Okay, I'm gonna take a 2-minute undies really quick. All right, I'll bring us back. Thanks, was just looking into something else on this. So, to be coy. Let's see, that moves us to our agenda topics. Madam Manager, were there any staff reports?
No staff reports. I do want to clarify, we purchased the gondola #1 in 2022, just to clear that up for the record.
Thank you. Madam Mayor.
Sorry, this has nothing to do with finance, but we lost two of our kind of pioneers in Gino. One is Sid Smith. He's one of the last living Smith brothers of the dairy property that used to be all of the valley, was this Smith family. So we're sorry to hear that for the Smith family. And the other one is Jean Overstreet has died. She was the wife of a former mayor Overstreet. So our condolences go to her family also.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So no staff reports. Our next meeting date is May 4th, 2026. May the 4th be with you, and we will see everyone there, and we're adjourned.